The night was darker than most, the kind of dark that swallows your footsteps and erases your shadow. Rain fell in rhythmic drops, tapping on metal railings, bouncing off cracked sidewalks, and trickling into the gutters of East Monroe Street. City lights flickered behind the curtain of rain, and the world smelled of wet concrete and distant secrets. Derek Taylor, a tall black man in his mid-30s with strong shoulders and tired eyes, had just clocked out from his second job, night janitor at St. Francis Hospital. His body ached from hours of scrubbing sterile floors, but his spirit carried something heavier. Life hadn't given Derek many shortcuts. He'd learned to fight for everything: food, rent, respect. As he pulled up the collar of his jacket and crossed the intersection near 6th and Ash, something caught his attention. It wasn't the weather. It wasn't the traffic. It was a sound, faint, raw, and vulnerable. A cry. Not the cry of a baby, nor the scream of someone in pain. It was the soft, broken weeping of a woman. Derek slowed down. He looked around, scanning the dim sidewalk near the alley beside a closed bakery. That's when he saw her, hunched over on a bench under a flickering street lamp. A young woman, drenched in rain, her hands trembling as she clutched her coat tighter. Her hair was soaked, sticking to her pale face. She wasn't wearing shoes. She looked lost. Derek hesitated. He'd been taught to mind his own business, especially when it came to situations involving women. A black man approaching a crying white woman in the middle of the night? That could go wrong in too many ways. But something in his gut wouldn't let him walk away. He stepped forward slowly, keeping his distance. "Miss? You okay?" The woman didn't respond. She didn't even look up. Her shoulders just shook harder, as if her grief had frozen her into place. "I'm not going to hurt you," he added, softer this time. "Just want to know if you need help." Finally, she lifted her head slightly, her face streaked with tears and rain. Her eyes, a pale green, were full of panic, as if she wasn't sure whether to run or beg for help. I don't know where to go," she whispered, almost inaudible. "Please don't leave." Derek's heart tightened. He noticed the bruising on her wrists, barely hidden beneath the cuffs of her coat. Something was wrong. Very wrong. "Okay," he said gently, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small towel from his janitor's kit. "Here, just dry your face a little." She took the towel hesitantly, hands trembling. "What's your name?" Derek asked. "Lena," she replied, still not meeting his gaze. "All right, Lena. Look, this ain't a great part of town to be out and alone. Especially like this. You got family nearby? Someone I can call for you?" She shook her head violently. "No, no one. I can't go back. Please." Those words sent a chill through him. He glanced around. No one else in sight. Rain still fell steadily, but the streets were empty, almost too quiet for a city this big. He sighed, his instincts wrestling with his caution. "I got a place just a few blocks up," he said finally. "It's small, not much, but it's warm and safe. You can come, just until you figure something out. No pressure. I'll even sleep on the chair if it makes you feel better." Lena looked up again, her eyes pleading. "You sure? I wouldn't offer if I wasn't." The next few minutes passed in silence, except for the shuffle of their wet footsteps. Derek walked slightly ahead, giving her space, but checking back often to make sure she was still there. When they reached his tiny apartment on the second floor of an old brick building, he handed her a dry towel, a spare hoodie, and a pair of socks. "You hungry?" he asked, pulling out a can of chicken soup from his cupboard. Lena nodded slowly, wrapping the hoodie around herself like a shield. Her breathing had calmed, but she still seemed haunted, like someone being chased by a past they couldn't outrun. As Derek warmed the soup on the stove, he stole glances at her. She hadn't said much, but the pain in her eyes spoke volumes. He didn't ask more questions. Not yet. Sometimes, offering someone silence is the kindest thing you can do. But even as he stirred the pot, Derek knew one thing for sure. This night was going to change everything. And something told him this wasn't a random encounter. This was the start of something far bigger than he could imagine. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time the soup was ready. Inside Derek's modest apartment, a warm yellow glow filled the space, the kind that only a single lamp and a heart full of compassion can cast. Derek handed Lena the steaming bowl. "Take your time," he said. "Ain't much, but it's hot." She wrapped her fingers around it like she was holding a lifeline. For a few minutes, the only sound was the quiet clink of her spoon against the ceramic bowl. She ate slowly, savoring every bite like it had been years since her last real meal. Derek didn't press her for answers. He sat at the other end of the couch, sipping water, his mind racing with quiet questions. Who was this woman? What had happened to her? And why did the look in her eyes feel so familiar? That heavy kind of sadness that settles behind the bones. "You good for the night?" he asked gently, once she was done. She nodded, setting the empty bowl down. "Yes, thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped." He shrugged, as if saving people in the rain was something he did every week. Ain't no thing. But it was. Deep down, Derek knew how dangerous this world could be for a woman like her. And a part of him couldn't help but wonder, was she running from someone? Or something? Lena stood and glanced toward the small pull-out bed near the window. "May I?" "All yours," he said. "Sheets are clean. Promise." She smiled, weakly. It was the first time he saw her smile, and though it was faint, it held a kind of broken beauty. As she lay down, wrapped in an old quilt, Derek stayed up a while longer in the kitchen. He didn't sleep much that night. Too many thoughts. Too many unknowns. The next morning, sunlight peeked through the window. Lena was still asleep, curled up tight, peaceful. Derek made coffee and scrambled some eggs. The smell must have woken her. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "You didn't have to do all this," she said softly. He smiled. "Can't have you starving now. You got a long road ahead, I bet." Lena paused, her lips pressed into a line. Then finally, she said, "I left someone dangerous. I had to. I didn't know where to go." That explained the bruises. "That someone still looking for you?" Derek asked. She nodded. "He's powerful. He knows people. I've been hiding for weeks. I just broke down last night." Derek's face tightened. "Well, he ain't getting to you here." She looked up, startled. "You'd really risk that? For a stranger?" He took a slow sip of coffee. "Stranger or not, you're a person. And I've seen too many good people get chewed up and thrown away because nobody stepped up. Not happening on my watch." Tears welled in Lena's eyes again, but this time not from fear, from relief. Over the next couple of days, she stayed with Derek. He let her use his old laptop to search for jobs and shelters. She cleaned up, started laughing a little, and even cooked dinner once. Pasta with way too much garlic, but it made them both laugh. They started talking more. About simple things, music, books, the little joys they once had. Derek shared stories about growing up with his grandma in the South, how she taught him never to judge a person by what they carry on the outside. Lena talked about how she once wanted to be a children's book illustrator before life turned too messy to dream. The warmth between them grew, not romantic, not yet, just two souls recognizing the weight in each other's eyes. But on the fifth night, everything changed. They were watching an old comedy on TV when Lena went pale. Her hand clutched the blanket tightly. "What's wrong?" Derek asked. She pointed to the screen. A man in the background of a news report. Tall, suit, smiling like a politician. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the man I ran from." Derek froze. "He's a public figure," she added, her voice cracking. "Nobody believes what he does behind closed doors. He hurt me, controlled me, threatened me if I ever left. And now he's looking for me. I just know it." The man on the screen was being interviewed for a charity campaign, praised for his community leadership. The truth felt like a punch to the gut. Derek looked at her, truly looked. And in that moment, he realized something. This wasn't just a case of helping a stranger. This was about exposing a monster and protecting someone who had nowhere else to turn. "I won't let him get to you," Derek said, voice steady. "But we gotta be smart. Real smart." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with the sound of two people making a decision, one that would change both of their lives forever. By the next morning, Derek had a plan, or at least the beginning of one. He'd spent most of the night researching the man Lena pointed out on the TV. His name was Bradley Kane, a name that sounded like money, privilege, and polished lies. Kane was a local businessman turned rising political star. He ran a nonprofit on the surface, had hands in property development, and recently announced plans to run for mayor. He had powerful friends, an impeccable public image, and a reputation for generosity. But behind that smooth-talking mask, Lena said, was something far darker. He had cameras in every room, she whispered as they sat at Derek's small kitchen table. He tracked my phone. He watched what I wore, who I spoke to, even how I laughed. It got worse every day. Derek clenched his jaw. And nobody ever noticed? She shook her head. People saw bruises. Some of his staff even saw him yelling. But he's charming, manipulative. If I told anyone, they'd say I was lying. Derek leaned back, rubbing his face. All right, he said. Then we give them something they can't deny. Lena looked at him, unsure. What do you mean? I know a reporter. Old friend. She owes me one. If we can get something solid, text, photos, proof, we go to her. Lena hesitated. If we do this, if he finds out, he'll come after you too. He smiled faintly. Let him. Lena didn't respond right away, but something in her eyes shifted. A flicker of courage returning to its rightful place. The next few days, they worked together in quiet urgency. Lena searched through her old accounts, backup drives, cloud storage. She found screenshots, messages where Bradley threatened her, surveillance footage he accidentally emailed to her once, photos of bruises with timestamps, and one voice memo, short but chilling, where Bradley could be heard saying, "No one will believe you anyway." It was enough to raise eyebrows, enough to start a storm. Derek contacted his old friend, Maya, a local investigative journalist. She was skeptical at first. After all, Bradley Kane was practically the city's golden boy. But once she saw the evidence, her tone changed. Where's the woman now? Maya asked. With me, Derek said firmly. Safe, but scared. She's brave to come forward, Maya replied. I'll meet you both. Tonight, off the record first. That evening, they met in a quiet cafe after hours. Maya listened intently as Lena spoke, her voice shaky but determined. She showed her proof, told her story. By the end, Maya was silent for a long moment. This could cost me my job, she finally said. But I'm in. Let me do this right. If I go public too fast, he'll spin it. We need to build a case with integrity. Lena nodded, her hands trembling just slightly. I just want the truth to be known. I want him to stop. And so the process began. Over the next week, Maya investigated Bradley Kane under the radar. She found whispers of NDAs signed by former female staff, financial inconsistencies in his charity work, a former intern who, off the record, admitted to being cornered once in his office. The cracks were forming. Meanwhile, Derek kept Lena safe, always watching over her, making sure no strange cars lingered outside. He changed her phone number, helped her apply for a new ID. They were two people now, connected by something deeper than circumstance, purpose. One evening, as they watched the city skyline from Derek's balcony, Lena turned to him. Why are you doing all this for me? Derek shrugged. Because once someone helped me too. When I hit bottom, someone didn't give up on me. I swore I'd pass that on if I ever could. She looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and awe. Then that person saved me too, even if they never knew it. He smiled. Maybe that's how it works. Days later, Maya called with news. I'm ready, she said. The article's finished. And if we're lucky, it'll make waves by morning. Lena's hands shook as she read the final draft. Her story laid bare. Her pain finally validated. Are you sure? Maya asked gently. Lena exhaled deeply. Yes, I'm done hiding. That night, the article went live. Headline, The Shadow Behind the Smile. Allegations against Bradley Kane. Within hours, it went viral. And as the world woke up to the truth, one man began scrambling to hide it. But this time, Lena wasn't alone. This time, truth had backup. The morning after the article dropped, the city felt different. Quieter. Like the collective breath of a population was being held all at once. And then, as if a match had been struck in dry brush, chaos erupted. Social media lit up with posts and retweets, screenshots of Maya's article, and furious debates. Some people called Lena a hero. Others, predictably, questioned her integrity. But one thing was clear. The mask of Bradley Kane was cracking, and fast. By 10 a.m., Kane's team released a vague, defensive statement. These allegations are completely false and politically motivated. Mr. Kane maintains his innocence and will not be responding to defamatory rumors. But silence wasn't going to help him now. News channels picked up the story. Former employees began to speak anonymously to reporters. A local university even suspended a partnership with Kane's nonprofit, pending internal review. And all the while, Lena stayed out of sight. Derek kept the news on low volume, glancing over occasionally as he made breakfast. Lena sat nearby, eyes focused on her phone. She didn't say much, but the weight in her shoulders had changed, no longer hunched in fear, but in resolve. "You okay?" Derek asked softly. "I think so," she said. "I didn't expect people to believe me this quickly." "That's the power of truth," he replied. "It hits different when it's real." By mid-afternoon, the pressure on Kane reached a boiling point. His mayoral campaign office was vandalized. Protesters gathered outside City Hall. Anonymous sources hinted at internal turmoil in his organization. And then came a phone call. Maya's voice was sharp, urgent. "He's retaliating." "What?" Derek asked, straightening. "He filed a lawsuit for defamation. Against me. Against the paper." And she paused against Lena. Lena's eyes widened. "What does that mean?" "It's a scare tactic," Maya said. "He's trying to silence you, to drain you financially, scare you back into hiding." Derek's jaw tightened. "He's not going to win." "No," Maya said, "but he's going to make it messy." And messy it became. Lena's past, her mistakes, her choices, were suddenly public knowledge. Old photos from party, a petty misdemeanor from years ago. Online trolls swarmed her pages, calling her a liar, a gold digger, an attention seeker. It was exactly what she feared. One night, as rain pattered against the windows, Lena sat on the couch, her face blank. Derek sat beside her, unsure of what to say. Then she whispered, "Maybe I should just disappear." "No," he said firmly. "You've come too far. You're not the one who did wrong. He is. But what if no one cares?" "I care." That quiet answer, spoken without hesitation, stopped her spiraling. She looked at him then. "Why do you keep showing up for me?" He met her eyes. "Because sometimes people don't need saving. They just need someone to stand beside them while they save themselves." She smiled, barely, but it was real. In the days that followed, Lena started receiving messages, private ones, from women, strangers, anonymous accounts. Some share their stories. Others simply said, "Thank you for speaking up." The tide was turning. And then, the biggest blow yet. An internal employee from Kane's nonprofit came forward. Not anonymously this time. Her name was Eliza, and she had documents, contracts, payment trails, records of payouts to silence victims. One document even showed hush money paid to a woman Lena had never met, with Kane's signature at the bottom. It was the proof no one could deny. Maya published a follow-up article, citing the documents. By then, public opinion had shifted dramatically. Kane's sponsors pulled out. His political party distanced themselves. And finally, the police reopened an investigation that had once been dismissed without cause. One night, as Derek and Lena walked through a quiet street under dim street lamps, she looked up and said, "It's really happening, isn't it?" He nodded. "It is. And I'm still standing." "You are." She exhaled deeply, then laughed, genuinely for the first time in weeks. "I don't know what happens next, but for the first time, I'm not afraid of it." Derek smiled. "Then you're already winning." Kane wasn't going down quietly. Despite the damning evidence, despite the public backlash and the unraveling of his campaign, he clung to his facade like a man trying to hold back the tide with bare hands. His public appearances were fewer now, his face no longer plastered across billboards, but he was still fighting. One morning, Lena received a letter, hand-delivered. No postage. It was written on crisp, expensive paper. The logo at the top was unmistakable, Kane Enterprises. She read it aloud with Derek nearby. "Cease all public commentary regarding Mr. Kane. Withdraw your allegations. Failure to comply will result in a legal escalation." Lena shook her head. "He's desperate." Derek frowned. "This isn't just a threat. It's bait. Should I respond?" "No, but maybe it's time you faced him." She blinked. You mean talk to him? In person? Yes. Lena hesitated. He's manipulative, dangerous. And you're stronger now. Silence stretched between them before she finally nodded. Okay. It wasn't easy to arrange. Kane's assistant, one of the few still loyal, agreed to set a brief meeting under the condition it remained private. A neutral space was chosen. A downtown hotel lobby. Elegant, public, safe. Lena entered first, her head high, shoulders squared. Kane was already seated at a table near the window, a fake smile plastered across his face. He stood when he saw her, ever the politician. Lena, he said smoothly, extending a hand. She ignored it and sat down. I assume you know why I'm here, she said. Kane's smile faltered slightly. To destroy what little reputation I have left. No, she said, calm. To tell you it's over, and that I'm not afraid of you anymore. He laughed quietly. You've made your point. You've hurt me. Congratulations. Lena's voice didn't waver. I didn't hurt you. You did that yourself. I just stopped covering it up. Kane leaned forward, his tone hardening. You think you've won? This won't last. The public forgets. Eventually, the noise dies down and people move on. Maybe, she said, but I won't. And neither will the women who are finally speaking up. He sneered. You're a nobody, a runaway, a failed actress with a hero complex. And you're a coward who abuses power because it's the only thing that makes you feel big. Kane stood abruptly, glaring down at her. This conversation is over. Lena stood too, calm and composed. No, your story is over. Later that night, Derek met her at the park near her apartment, the same one where they had sat when this all began. You saw him? He asked. She nodded. Are you okay? I think so, she said. I wasn't scared. They walked in silence for a while, the crisp night air wrapping around them. Lena paused near the bench and looked up at the sky. I used to think I was weak, she said, for staying quiet, for letting him win for so long. You weren't weak, Derek said. You were surviving. She looked at him. And now you're leading. The next morning, Kane's resignation hit the news. He stepped down from every public and private role. His board of directors dissolved the nonprofit, and multiple lawsuits were filed, not just from Lena, but from other victims. Justice wasn't swift, but it was coming. And through it all, Lena remained steady. Not silent, not loud, but steady. She gave interviews. She helped other women prepare their statements. She started attending community groups for survivors. And each time she told her story, her voice grew stronger. Derek stood by her side at every turn, never in front of her, never speaking for her, just present, solid, reliable. One afternoon, months later, Lena and Derek visited a youth center opening in the heart of the city. The organization running it had partnered with advocacy groups to provide resources for women in crisis. The director approached Lena, smiling. We wouldn't be here without your story, she said. You reminded people that it's not about saving someone. It's about seeing them. Lena blinked back tears. Later that evening, as she and Derek sat quietly together, she said, You know, when you found me that night, crying in the street, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. And now, he asked, now I know it was the moment everything started to change. Seasons changed. Time, as it always does, moved on, not to erase, but to soften, to shape, to rebuild. Lena's world was no longer bound by the shadows of her past. Her story had taken root in the hearts of many, reaching far beyond the city where it began. She wasn't just the girl who cried in the street. She was now the woman who stood tall in courtrooms, classrooms, and conversations. Derek, too, had changed. He had started volunteering full-time at the shelter he once supported in spare moments. Eventually, he helped launch a mentorship program for young men who grew up in broken homes. Like him, he shared stories of healing, of listening, of learning how to be a safe place for others. Together, they weren't perfect, but they were powerful, and the bond that started in a moment of pain had become something sacred, not romantic in the way people expected, but rooted in something far deeper: respect, truth, and healing. One evening, Derek and Lena were invited to speak at a university panel titled Humanity in the City: Stories of Unexpected Courage. Lena, dressed in soft earth tones, stood at the microphone, the bright lights overhead casting a calm glow around her. "I never thought I'd be here," she began, her voice steady. "Not because I doubted life could change, but because I didn't think anyone would care to listen." A pause. But someone did. A stranger. A black man who saw a woman crying on the street and stopped, not because he had the answers, but because he had the heart to ask, "Are you okay?" The crowd was silent, listening intently. That moment didn't fix my life. It didn't erase my trauma, but it reminded me I wasn't invisible. She looked over at Derek, seated nearby. He didn't rescue me. He reminded me I could rescue myself. Applause filled the room. Derek spoke next. "I wasn't supposed to be on that street. I almost turned left at the light. Almost kept driving." He smiled, but something told me to stop. I didn't know her. Didn't know her story. But I knew what it looked like to be broken and unseen. I knew the sound of silent pain. He looked out at the audience. "We don't need capes. We don't need to fix people. We just need to see them. To be there long enough for someone to realize they matter." After the panel, a young student approached them, eyes wide, voice trembling. "I was planning to leave school," she admitted. "Felt like no one saw me, like I didn't belong. But listening to you two tonight, I don't know, I just feel something shift." Lena gently took the girl's hand. "That shift is where change begins." Months passed. The world remained chaotic in many ways, filled with noise and distractions. But Lena and Derek carved out peace where they could, together and separately. They led workshops, partnered with community leaders, and built support networks for victims of abuse. Eventually, Lena published a memoir, "The Night I Was Seen." It hit bestseller lists within weeks. In it, she detailed her story, the abuse, the fear, the silence, and the moment it all changed. The night someone stopped. The night a simple question lit the path back to herself. The final page read, "Sometimes, healing starts with a stranger's eyes that don't look away, with hands that don't grab but offer, with silence that listens, not judges." That night, on that cold city street, I wasn't rescued. I was reminded that I still existed. And that was enough to begin again. One crisp Sunday morning, Lena sat in a quiet cafe corner, signing a stack of books. Derek joined her with 2 cups of coffee. "You really wrote it," he said, smiling. She nodded. "I did, and now everyone knows." She looked at him. "And it's okay, because I know me now." They clinked their cups gently, sipping as the city moved outside the window. The same city that once broke her, now watching her rise. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was real. Pain still whispered on certain nights. Triggers still showed up uninvited. But now Lena had tools. And more than that, she had purpose. She and Derek didn't just change each other's lives. They proved that sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a pause, a question, a moment of empathy, can spark a chain reaction that leads to healing, to justice, and to hope. Because when one person chooses to stop and see another, the whole world begins to change.